At this time, we are going to conduct the panel discussion. So I'm going to ask Allison and Bob and Kathy to come up and get seated up here. And we have a series of questions. We're going to limit each response to a two or 3 minutes. There'll be plenty of time for audience interaction as well, but I've prepared a few questions. Folks, feel free to use the restroom, but we're going to continue on at this time. So thank you for your attention. Okay, and there's water. So, okay.
You want us in a different order?
No, this is fine. Okay, so no, the order is going to be this. Allison is going to be questioned first. And then Bob and Kathy, if that works with the crew. How's that sound? Okay? So, all right. So, Allison, what a beautiful, beautiful film. And you made such interesting choices on how you filmed this, the cinematography, the pace, the editing choices. What were you trying to achieve, and how well do you think you achieved it?
Well, that's a loaded question. A couple of loaded questions.
Yeah.
I decided early on that I wanted it to be completely authentic and unembellished. I wanted to tell Bob's story in a very true and real way, and I really decided upon meeting Bob and knowing about his story that I wanted everything to play out fully. So in other words, no quick cuts and no, I wanted, if he's walking away, I wanted him to just, I talked to Joe Brunette, who just did an incredible job with the cinematography. I would say, no, just hold it, because I just wanted I wanted the story to play out in real time. The jumps are, I guess, through the seasons more than anything. Mm-hmm. And I also set out to not tell anybody how they should interpret the story or what they should walk away with. I really wanted it to be very personal in terms of the viewer's experience, so that, every time I watch it, I'm in a different place and I walk away with something different from it, because it's such a complex, his story, he's so deep and complex, and what he was going through was so deep, and the pigs add another layer, and Monk, the dog, adds another layer, and the seasons changing. It's just always, there's so many dimensions, and I just wanted people to be able to interpret in their own way and walk away with whatever they're going to walk away with without trying to force feed them.
I think you achieved that. Allison, you've been doing screenings for a while now, and what is the most common feedback you get about this, and how do you respond to that feedback?
I think it's a good thing when people don't applaud until, maybe when the credits finally roll or end up rolling, because I think that means that people are thinking. And so, for instance, tonight, I never want when the white screen with the snow goes to black. Mm-hmm. I think it's a failure if people applaud at that point, because I think people that have so much to take in that they just need time to think and to be with their thoughts. And so, I forgot the question. Did that answer
no.
it?
Just what's your feedback? Or what is the feedback you usually hear about the film?
It's been really remarkable, because Bob's story and the fact that the reason that when I read a couple of essays that Bob had written, the thing that struck me more than anything was how willing he was to expose himself, warts and all, as an imperfect person, which of course we all are. And that to me was so appealing and so compelling. And I think that people also, it allows us all to be imperfect. Your willingness to expose yourself in that way allows us all to acknowledge our imperfections. And if we go through life just saying, "Oh no, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine," we'll never evolve as people, as individuals. And so Bob's willingness to look at himself allows us to look at ourselves. And so I think the greatest reaction, is people who've been on the cusp of like considering that maybe eating meat or whether it's I'm not going to buy factory farmed meat anymore, or I cannot be part of this system at all, I'm not going to eat meat. I have gotten reactions from people, and it's incredibly gratifying. But the film doesn't tell them that they shouldn't do that. They have to
Draw
arrive
their own
there.
conclusions. Allison, you are vegan, and how did you manage to shoot that crushing slaughterhouse scene? What was your emotional reaction? Were you in film mode? Did you allow to feel the last pig's utter terror?
I was so focused on, I just couldn't believe that the slaughterhouse was actually going to allow us to go in and film. And so I was just, my mindset was just, oh God, I hope we get in there, because I felt it was so important to include that in the story. And it wasn't until I they made me put the hard hat on, and that I sort of realized that where we were. And then it was, well, oddly enough, and Bob captured this really beautifully in one of the essays that he wrote, once you're on the kill floor and the pig is dead, it's like a well-oiled machine. It's creepy how you can just distance yourself in a way. And of course, we're also in filming mode. But the second that we would go out to shoot the pigs that were still alive and hadn't yet been taken to the kill floor was absolutely traumatic, traumatizing, crushing to see the life still in them and the trust. And yet they knew something bad was happening, and that was, life-changing is the best way to put it. It was, and the last load of pigs that he loaded onto the truck in the winter, that just killed me. I don't think I've ever quite recovered from that. And every time I watch that scene, I just mutter, and I'm sorry to the pigs, because you can't help but feel that you were part of making that happen in some way if you didn't stop it. So. This one here has a much better story to tell, because she saves them.
So my last question, there'll be time for more discussion here. Just opening up the questions right now is, last pig opened up hearts, no question about it. I've been doing this a long time, and it definitely affected me. Allison, are there other documentaries, other films that you can recommend that may help people take the next step, or may help them understand better what goes on with how we do this?
Well, I think we are all such unique individuals, and something that speaks to me is not going to necessarily speak to the next person.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think it's so great that there are films like What the Health, Cowspiracy, Ghosts in Our Machine, The Last Pig. We all are going to reach different people on a different level. And so I think in this case, it takes all of us to sort of get the fire burning. I think probably, I just named a few.
Oh, yeah.
But
for me, it was Earthlings.
Earthlings.
Yeah. Earthlings changed my life.
And there are some people that cannot
Completely.
even come near watching Earthlings.
We're all in different places.
Yeah.
But we're all here tonight.
And then there is, for me, it was, as a child, it was Black Beauty. Well, it was reading Black Beauty, So it's interesting how, or maybe it was Charlotte's Web for somebody else.
Peaceable Kingdom. The
Yeah.
Witness, the Tribe of Heart. Now, The Last Pig is among those for sure. I'm going to move along, okay? A few questions for Bob. So, Bob, thank you for being here and allowing Allison and her camera into your world. Bob took a lot of guts. What was it that finally made you say yes?
That's fine. When Allison emailed me, one day she got in touch with me and she said she was a filmmaker and she was interested in making the film. And at first I was apprehensive about doing it. I didn't like the idea of having a camera in my face. I didn't like the idea of having my story told by someone else. I'm a writer. I was used to telling the story myself. But Allison and I agreed to have a phone call, and we spent an hour on the phone just talking about everything, one of those wide-ranging conversations that you have. And at the end of the call, she convinced me to allow her and Joe Brunette, the cinematographer, to come to the farm and just sit down and talk. And when they came, it was basically love at first sight. We sat out on my back patio and we talked for 3 hours. And by the end of it, we knew that we were kindred spirits. We knew that we wanted to make a film. We knew that we all wanted to make the same sort of film. And I was convinced that the story in Allison and Joe's hands would be well taken care of. And so by the time they left, we had decided to do it.
So, hey, has having The Last Pig traveling around the country changed your life, Bob, in any way? And can you talk about it if it has?
Yeah. Practically day to day, it hasn't really changed anything except that I do these things now, which is strange and different. But one thing that has changed is when I was making the film, or when we were making the film, and when I was writing actively and publishing actively, I was in touch with people in the vegan and vegetarian community, the animal rights community, the animal welfare community, the alternative agriculture community, and I felt like I was part of something. And when the film wrapped and it was finished, I sort of dropped out of that scene. And now that the film has resurfaced and is being screened and seen and shown at film festivals, I'm feeling connected again to those people and that movement and that sort of thing.
Great people. All right, here's a tough one. And if you can't answer it, that's all right. But if you could say a single thing to the pigs that you raised for slaughter, Bob, what would it be?
I loved every minute that I spent with the pigs, but I would tell them that I would give up every second that I spent with every pig that I ever spent any time with to bring just one of them back.
And then what's your message to the thousands of other farmers who continue to grow animals to feed humans?
I would ask that they just look at the animals that are in their care with an open mind and accept the possibility that there might be much more there than they are accustomed to believing.
Thank you, dear. So the next one is Kathy Stevens. How you doing? Doll. All right. So I didn't bring tissues. The film, Kathy, obviously, we call it the transformation of a human heart. It's Bob's story. And there's still a lot we don't know about pigs, but you have quite a relationship with them. And my question is, Kathy, your relationship with pigs in many ways is the opposite of Bob's. So what can you tell us about them?
Well, I think Bob could tell us this too. In fact, I know he could. they're a force of nature. People who have heard me speak always hear me say 10 chickens are as individual as 10 people, 10 pigs are as individual as 10 people. But the universal things about pigs is their enormous physical strength, their fierce intelligence, their emotional range that you even captured in the film mimics ours. And I always defy our visitors at Catskill to name a single emotion that we have that an animal doesn't, and nobody has ever been able to do it. Sometimes people say greed, but animals are very greedy about their humans, where they sleep, their food. Pigs' emotional range, like you do not want to be around a pig when it's having a temper tantrum. Pigs, I believe, pigs laugh. They make a sound when they're upset that is disarmingly like crying. When you've hurt their feelings, they're so sensitive. It's so easy to hurt a pig's feelings, and they it sounds like crying. And I loved how you conveyed their love for Bob. And what was one thing that was so hard for me to watch was how much they trusted you and how willingly they went on to that trailer. So that's a little bit about who they are. They are a remarkable, as Bob said, a remarkable, remarkable being.
Thank you, dear. All right. Kathy and I have known each other a long time. I know your work well, and I know I've been down there several times, definitely over a decade. You have a mantra, Kathy, that defines the Catskill philosophy, and what it is in the ways that truly matter, we are all the same. So can you explain what you mean by that and how it defines your work?
Sure. No matter our species, we are all very much individuals within our species. We all move toward joy and away from suffering. We all have rich emotional lives, whether we are human or pig or whale or chicken. And pain and terror and suffering feel no different to a pig or to a chicken than they do to any of us. So those are the ways that far outweigh our individual differences. To me, there's no more meaningful difference between a chicken and myself than there is between a little boy and myself. And if it's true that they want their lives, and I don't think anybody would dispute this, if it's true that they want their lives as much as I want mine, then just because the culture has said it's okay for me to eat them, can't I think autonomously and get to a very different answer pretty darn quickly based on those similarities?
It's beautiful. So I think it's fair to say that Catskill holds a particular point of view about humanity that can help shape its work. And can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I believe, Bob did a courageous thing and had the courage to listen to his heart instead of his pocketbook and to buck convention. And I think that the animal rights, any social change movement takes all kinds of approaches. You look at the women's rights movement, the civil rights movement, the immigrants' rights movement, marriage equality. There's not a single approach to when you're talking about massive social change. There's not a single approach. It takes every kind of approach. We choose to lead with love, A, and B, to believe in humanity's inherent goodness and in each individual's capacity to change once they know the truth. And all our programming is designed from those points of view, because none of us wakes up in the morning saying, I'm gonna torture animals at breakfast today. We don't say that. We're not intending to do that, but that in fact is what we do every time we pick up a fork and we choose an egg as opposed to tofu scramble, or a piece of bacon as opposed to oatmeal. So choosing to lead with love, to believe in everyone's inherent goodness, and that if armed with the truth, people will feel compelled to make change, whether it's for the animals or for the climate. You know, the planet's not going to be here too much longer if we don't reverse the course that this ship is on. Or for their own health, then that's the approach that we take.
You're kind of
Choose to
leading right into my next question. My last one is that, you know, this is bigger than saving pigs. It is, but isn't it? I mean, what's the deal with our diet and its effect on the planet? You know, you just said.
Number one cause of global warming: water pollution, species extinction, deforestation, topsoil erosion, ocean acidification, dead zones in the ocean the size of the state of New Jersey, dying coral reefs. What did I read today? Oh gosh, what was the number? You can look this up. It was today. 1,000 soccer fields a second of topsoil are being eroded, something crazy like that.
But we don't hear this. We hear about car emissions. And
We hear about car emissions, and then a lot of us feel like we're doing the right thing when we
buy a hybrid.
buy a hybrid and recycle. And we're just dancing around the edges if we don't change our diet, which is the number one cause of climate change, which the United Nations knew about in 2006. They put out a report about it. So I invite the people who still ate meat still are eating meat as I did most of my life, to do your own research and maybe to listen to your hearts a little bit. And if you need the animal, if you need to fall in love with a pig or a chicken, then come visit Catskill Animal Sanctuary, because they will help you in this journey.
Yeah, one recommendation, if you're interested in that subject, is the documentary Cowspiracy, which we showed here with a couple of years ago. Kathy spoke, and talk about opening your eyes to the way eating animals is contributing to the demise of the planet. It's scientific. It's not a myth. It's not a lot of hype. It's fact-based, and we don't know about it. And that documentary should be required in schools, number one. Number two, before we open it up to the audience, I'd just like to say what you saw with Bob's is a beautiful farm. The animals were well cared for, beautiful land. You know, billions of them are born in factory farms. They never see light. They grow up that way. They have short, miserable lives. They're pumped with antibiotics and hormones, and that is factory farming, and that's what's across the street at Hannaford. We need to make the connection. It's not across the street at Hannaford, that's Market 32. But you get my point. I ask you, please make the connection between what you see on the shelves and what it took to get there and how they live. What Bob presented is atypical. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to open it up to the audience. Anyone, a question, a comment, your own journey. I can run around with this, right? Can I do that, Maria? I think I can. Okay. So I'm going to open this up to the audience, address your questions to, you were the first, right? Okay, here come I. Hi there. And Incidentally, this is being recorded. So what I'll ask is the panelists, if you're addressing it to anyone in particular, let them know. I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear it.
This question is for Bob. I'm curious what other farmers or other people that you dealt with, maybe the people at the slaughterhouse, what they think, what you've talked about with them in terms of the changes that you've made, and maybe, other people in your community or your life.
I think you got that, Eric, right? That was loud enough. What other farmers at the slaughterhouse think of Bob's transition with his life?
Yeah, I was part of a pretty small farming community, as most agricultural communities in New York State are. It's a it's dairy farming, and I didn't know a lot of dairy farmers, but I did know a few farmers, and the farmers that I did know supported my decision. The livestock farmers, actually, and the vegetable farmers didn't agree with me, but they supported my decision. But something that impresses me more than that is that the slaughterhouse that we filmed at allowed us to film after they knew that I had decided to give up pig farming for ethical reasons, and after they knew that we were making a film that was about the fact that I had decided to give up pig farming for ethical reasons. And that says a lot about the people that work there and the idea in general.
Who else? Anybody? Questions, answers? Here I come. I'll go right through here. Thank you. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. To Bob, assuming you still live on that beautiful property, is there any reason why you couldn't have kept some animals and be your own sanctuary, so to speak?
Okay, so the question is, assuming Bob still lives on that beautiful property, is there a reason why Bob didn't choose to create a sanctuary of his own at that spot? Or just keep a few.
Yeah, we still do live there, but all of the land that you saw in the film that the pigs were on was leased land, which I leased from my neighbors. And that was a consideration. Starting sanctuary on leased land is not the best idea. In fact, my neighbors moved, and I'm not sure how the new neighbor would have felt about me having a sanctuary on their land. But more than that, running a sanctuary is very different than running a farm. The skill set required to run a sanctuary is very different. You need to be an organizer. You need to be a cheerleader. You need to be able to rouse people to your cause. You need to be able to get people to donate to your cause. And I was a good pig farmer, and I didn't think that I would be a good sanctuary manager. So that was another consideration. And the last one was pretty sort of selfish in a way. I didn't want to be tied to the farm. If I wasn't going to be a farmer raising pigs, I didn't want to be tied to the farm. And as soon as you have an animal on a farm, you're tied to the farm. The idea of going on vacation becomes a very complicated question. And I was, after 10 years, ready to take a break.
Any questions? Anyone want to talk about their own journey? Aha, you have a question. Okay. What a great audience. How wonderful. Okay.
I don't have a question so much as a comment, I guess, for all three of you. I have had the pleasure of taking many tours at Catskill and giving many tours at Catskill. I actually have my first tour of the season this Sunday, and I will never, I'll never tell your story the same way again. No. I'm so moved. And the respect that your story deserves is, I hope that I'm doing it justice, and I want to go right now, Kathy. I want to go and see Mario and Audrey right now. I can't wait to see them on Sunday, and I can't wait to keep telling your story. I just am moved, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Way in the back, John Scheib. Oh, I identified him. Great respect for this man.
My comment is just for Bob, and I think there's a slight tendency for audiences to somehow think of you in a possible negative way, but the way that the journey of many of us in this room, certainly me, I haven't eaten meat in maybe 20 years, but I'm 60, so that meant I did for 40. And as a person who's a consumer of meat, it feels though like we are the exact thing that you went through, or we go through the same thing. We are part of the issue. We are paying you to farm pigs. So I guess my point is I hope in some way you don't ever feel like you are villainized by doing this film. We are all you, unless for some reason we were born as a non-meat eater to begin with. We haven't all made the transition, the strong transition you've made, but we've been there, and we bear the same responsibility for animals. And thank you for the courage to do this. It's amazing. Thank you for the filmmaker. And Kathy, thank you. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Can I just add a PS? I think one of the things that's so powerful about Bob's story is that it's not about a factory farm. I mean, it's about somebody, he thought he was doing a great thing when he started 10 years ago. He was going to raise pigs humanely and provide an alternative to factory farmed meat. And so I think it just makes it an even more interesting and powerful epiphany that that's not good enough. Anyway, I just wanted to add that, but thank you for saying what you did.
Okay, I have a little story to tell. I also raise pigs and beef cows and chickens and goats and all sorts of things. And the reason I stopped, because I was polluting Crooked Lake. All right, the farm has been there since before the Revolutionary War. And when I bought the property, I got a federal farm land loan, and that required that I did something agricultural. They didn't care what it was, as long as it was agricultural. So I planted about 1,000 trees. I sat down, have a can of beer, and look at my work at the end of the day, and there was my goat eating the trees that I planted, right? It didn't work out too well. I could relate to the fact that you get emotionally involved with your animals, right? My pigs were very amusing. Friends would stop by, and they'd bring bowling balls. The pigs would throw them around, play with them. The first 2 pigs we had, we named them Oliver and Sherry. That was a mistake, right? Later on, we called them Pork Chop and Bacon. You know, and eventually, I had to stop because we were trying to get a sewer district built around Crooked Lake, and ENCON did a flyover, and you could tell by the temperature of the water and the colors that they did with infrared photography where the pollution was coming from. Well, the biggest polluter was Crooked Lake Hotel. Al Cohn's the owner, was number 1. I was number 2. We had horses and other things too. My first wife liked riding, and it was a disaster. The lake now has a sewer district around it. It's a lot cleaner. I'm glad that I'm not contributing to it. But two other things that I'm concerned about is economics. There are thousands, not thousands, millions of people employed in the agricultural industry, right? What are you going to do with them if you stopped eating meat, right? This is a big problem. The other problem is environmental pollution. We're doing a terrible job. We're dumping all sorts of nasty stuff into our rivers and our streams. The Hudson River at one point was cleaned, but we've done a job on it, right? Full of all sorts of terrible things. Can you comment on how do you clean up the environment with all these animals dumping sewage into it, you know?
So, thank you.
Oh, so,
Yeah, so it seemed there were two questions. The economic value to eating animals, how do you address that, if that was how I understand it? Yeah. Right. How do you employ them? And number two, how do we address the environmental catastrophes?
I think Kathy's the best person to answer this question.
Sir, I don't understand why, we still have to eat. We still have to eat. We would just be eating differently. So you would take the people who are growing the animals and killing the animals and cutting up the animals and packaging the animals and transporting the animals and have them employed in other food industries, in the grains and fruits and vegetables industries, right? Because we all still have to eat. There is no solution to the amount of, not only the amount of urine and feces, but also the amount of methane that animals emit. The only solution is to eliminate the demand. I mean, it's a little frustrating that we policymakers talk a lot, mostly about carbon emissions, but methane is 20 times more potent in terms of global warming than methane from cows, primarily, than CO2. So there will be we're expected to be 9.5 to 10 billion people by mid-century, and so the amount of animals we're going to grow to feed that number is going to increase unless we again turn the ship around. And so when you've already got the oceans are dying because of the riverways, the streams, as you mentioned, are dying because of our choice to eat animals. It takes 15 to 20 times the amount of natural resources to grow animals as it does to grow fruits and vegetables. So we must do this. Not only is it from our point of view an ethical imperative, it's also an imperative for our very survival and the survival of every other species. And for this beautiful planet, the only one we've got.
Okay. Hi there. No, I'm coming to you. We find a way to do it economically. We can put a man on the moon. We can figure out how to do it economically. Here you go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Andrea, and just actually a comment and then a question. One thing that just came to mind based on the last comment was the trauma I hear that people who are working in slaughterhouses go through and kind of post-traumatic stress that they experience, and that I think people switching from jobs like that to a different type of job would probably be better off in terms of just their mental well-being as well. And then my question is, I guess for Bob and Allison, what are you up to now or next? And then for the animal sanctuary, anything new that we might like to know about that the guests here might not know.
When I shut down the pig farm, as you saw in the film, I tried to transition the farm to vegetables. And after a year of that, I decided that I didn't want to have a vegetable farm. I didn't want to go through another farm business startup. And the needs of a vegetable farm were very different than the needs of the pig farm. And my temperament wasn't as well suited to vegetable farming. And I shut down the vegetable farm at the end of the season in 2015. And it's now spring of 2018, and I've been floundering around for the last 3 years or 2.5 years. But recently I've started freelance editing, which is going well. And I'm hoping that that is something that I can do long-term. But farming is no longer something that I'm going to be doing.
Well, I am still in the sea of pigs myself. I'm having produced this film, made it independently, and I'd like to give a little shout out to two of our supporters back there, Barbara and John. So we did a crowdfunding campaign, and that's how we were able to pay for post-production, and now I'm still working day and night to get the film out there and go to screenings and that sort of thing. So I'm still very much in Piglandia, and so some ideas are starting to gurgle up now. I'd like to do another film about farmed animals, but I haven't found the story, or I should say maybe the story hasn't found me, because a lot of times they find me. So, but I have a couple of other ideas. I mean, my films I've been making films that speak out for animal rights, animal welfare for 30 years. So whether it's gorillas or elephants, or in this case, pigs, that's my passion. So I'll keep doing that. I just, it hasn't gelled yet. So I'm open to great ideas. So if anybody has a brilliant idea,
Right.
But this one's a hard one to follow.
Excuse me.
You need to write a book.
Oh, sorry.
That's my suggestion, Bob. Because you're such a deep and beautiful and sensitive voice, and honest and courageous. You could write a hell of a book. You really could.
Yep. Amen. Do it.
I'm sure a few thousand people have said that. What's new at the sanctuary? We have relaunched our camp for children this summer, and it's 4 weeks long. We are piloting a youth leadership program to send young kids back into their community to become vegan leaders, whether in their schools or their families or their places of worship. That's one new initiative. And then another one that we're really excited about is that we're piloting a national mentor program, because again, starting from that place of believing that people are good, people just need help. I mean, let's face it, bacon tastes good. Hamburgers taste good. Grilled tuna tastes good. People want their food to taste good, and they don't, you see panic sometimes in people's faces when they okay, here's a story. A guy finished a tour, maybe with Kat, and he came up to me in the parking lot, tears streaming down his face. And he grabbed my arm and he said, "I get it now. Tell me what to do." Because he had met the pigs, and he had had a turkey fall asleep in his lap, and all those things that happen at sanctuaries where humans are friends, where the animals seek us out. So that was a moment when I thought, oh yeah, some people really just have no idea. The ones of us who are eating 3 meat and dairy-centric meals a day. So we are piloting a program now. It's local now. We've got 30 trained mentors. Are you one? You're not. We're going to go national with it this summer, and it's designed to meet people anywhere they are on their journey, whether they're, no judgment, whether they just want to say, I want to stop eating eggs, I'm going to start by not eating eggs, or I've been vegetarian for 45 years, it's time for me to take this final step, or anywhere in between that. So who asked? Those are a couple of the big things. And in the meantime, we always have animals coming and going animals that we fall in love with. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think I might have an idea for you because, you know, some people, for whatever reason, don't care about animals, but they care about humans, even though we are animals. And so, like, what this last person said sparked an idea, which is, you know, maybe if you could find a factory farming operation that had shut down and you followed around the people who no longer had to deal with the PTSD or whatever, or who are working through it post being in that industry, if you could like find those type of people and interview them and see what change had occurred in their life, or if you could even just interview people who were working in the industry, and maybe someone's already done this and I haven't heard of the documentary yet because there's a lot of documentaries. But anyway, I'm just curious about the human effect, even though I don't find it to be you know, anywhere near as horrible as what the factory farmed animals are experiencing. It's still a horrifying experience, I would imagine, for those people. And the human toll might be the only thing that could convince certain people of what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. And there have, thank you, there have been some articles that I've read that are, there was a guy in Canada who was very open about how he had become more and more violent in his daily life and was starting to abuse his girlfriend, and then was like, I have to get out of here. Yeah, very interesting idea. Thank you. I will chew on that. Yeah. Put that in the what? Parking lot. Put that in the parking lot. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that.
I just had a quick question for anyone that could not make it tonight. Like, what are their options for seeing the film? Is it something that people can buy? Is it something that's online, or?
How much do I owe you for asking that question?
She's a plant. Come on.
No, she's not. Thank you. No, I know. No, thank you for asking that question. So, right now, the phase that we're at, we've yes, we're selling. What's that? Honest Wait on May 11th. Oh, you're honest. Oh, hi. Yes, there's another screening at Honest Wait on May 11th. So we're just finishing up our festival tour, and we've been in almost 30 festivals now, which is amazing, which has been great throughout the world. We just won Best of Festival in Japan. So it's really, yeah, it's globally, that's the other thing about this story that's so cool, is that it's so universal and so simple and yet so deep at the same time. So now we're doing these individual screenings, and I do have to give a shout out to Veg Fund, which is a wonderful nonprofit who has made these screenings. They're paying the screening fee for tonight, and they can do the same for you. If you'd like to organize a screening in your local community, we can help you figure out how to do that and make it affordable, because you can get a grant. I'm working with a consultant that says, no, it's not time to put it out on VOD yet, which is video on demand. So we're still maximizing this. We're trying to get into colleges on campuses. Well, here we are. But we're doing a tour right now. We're calling it the Pigs Not Pork Tour. And there's this great guy named Ryan Phillips who has 3 adopted pigs. And he's been going around to campuses with the pigs. And so people can meet the pigs and see the film, and so that's been really cool. I think we've had 10 so far, so we're going to continue that. So organize a screening. It's not yet available, but we do have DVDs for sale out there, and that also keeps our engine stoked. Spreading the word when we do sign up for our Facebook page if you would. I mean, not sign up, but like us, and sign up for a newsletter out there, and do write your email address legibly if you can. All of that, we're sort of building this campaign, and we will hopefully get a distribution deal as well. So we're working on that. So I guess stay tuned and organize screenings right now. And if you know of a school that would like, I also want to get it into high schools. So I'm working on that too. I just need to clone myself a few times. But thank you for asking that. I hope I answered that thoroughly. Yeah, it takes a village.
So I had a question for Kathy. I just wanted to know, how do the animals end up at your sanctuary? I mean, are they all stories like Bob's, where these farmers
Oh
have this
gosh,
big
no,
epiphany
if
and
only.
they just come over?
No,
Or how
we'd
do
be
they
in
get there?
trouble, wouldn't we? if there were a lot of Bobs in the world.
In great trouble.
In great trouble. Good problem to have. You know, there's sort of big categories. A lot come from industry. So, for example, when a chicken farm was depopulating and putting thousands of chickens into dumpsters, literally, we took 400 chickens. The animals falling off the slaughter truck, animals or escaping the slaughter truck, animals escaping from live markets in the city. So a fair number of the animals we have are industry, the lucky ones from industry. A fair number come from animal hoarders, people who compulsively collect with no ability to take care of the animals. And then the police are called in. A lot, sadly to say, come from failed sanctuaries, some of which were never sanctuaries to begin with. They were just sort of hung out the shingle, but in fact were animal hoarders. And then there's this category that we called sort of random acts of callousness. You know, a chicken found in a mailbox, a duck tied to a tree in Central Park, a pig walking across Brooklyn Bridge. Lots of abandonments, people leaving their animals behind when they move, farm foreclosures, every now and then, this is the rarest case, and this is the case particularly with horses more than anything else, because everybody else is food, right? But every now and then someone gets sick, or dies, or loses a job and can't afford to take care of his or her horse or horses. So, you know, there are a couple dozen different reasons. And then we get to love them.
First, I'd like to say thank you for all three of you and everybody who made this happen tonight, for us to all come and enjoy this film. I do have a question for Bob. As you sit in the audience and watch this film, does it evoke particular feelings, emotions, thoughts, specifically as you're comforting the pigs, as you're corralling them into the trailer? Does that touch you in a certain way? Because you're telling them you're okay, you're comforting them, telling them you're safe, you're okay, as you load them. Does that evoke anything in you as you sit in the audience today watching that?
It does. And I'm trying to remember the word. A few months ago, we went to Italy and we did a little tour of Italy, and we did 5 or 6 screenings in a week. And the film was subtitled in Italian. And at one point, I say to one of the pigs, "Come on, buddy." And the translation in Italian was something like, "Come on, amico," friend. And for some reason, the juxtaposition of me saying, "Come on, buddy," and seeing "Come on, friend" come up in Italian drove home how hypocritical and paradoxical and absurd my relationship with the pigs was. I would say, "Come on, buddy, come on, get up in the trailer so that I can take you to the slaughterhouse and have you killed." you know, so it is at times a very strange experience to see the way, like Kathy mentioned earlier, they trusted me so much and did where, you know, they would follow me wherever I went. And they would go wherever I wanted them to. And they would walk off the trailer at the slaughterhouse and just walk right into that building, you know, because I asked them to. And so to see that is difficult. But to be perfectly honest, the most emotional thing for me is to see the dog because he died. Yeah, Monk. That's the hardest thing.
Comment for Allison, but I'd like to thank you guys all for being here this powerful evening. Allison asked for some kind of an idea for what could be the next project. Well, Tribe of Heart, right here.
Wait, where are,
Tribe of Heart started off to do 4 different films. A film about animals used in the fur industry, which was The Witness, Animals in Agriculture, Peaceable Kingdom, and there was 2 more that haven't got around to yet, so maybe you could fill the gap. There was one to be Animals in Entertainment and one in Animals in Labs. And the most powerful one, I thought, was The Witness, to go through the eyes of an individual activist. So there's 2 more unfinished works waiting out there, something you could consider.
Yeah, thank you.
Much.
Yeah, thank you. I got a little taste of the laboratory when I made a film about chimpanzees called Chimpanzees and Unnatural History. And all of the chimps were former laboratory chimps that had been retired. And the stories were just, you know, horrifying, how many, you know, liver biopsies they had and the conditions they lived in and that sort of thing. But thank you. I will think about that. Yeah, put that in the parking lot too. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Yeah. The Witness, Peaceable Kingdom, phenomenal. Tribe of Heart, and bridging the gap with animals in entertainment and experimentation. There's always more to do.
There is.
Anyone else? Okay. Oh! Okay, go for it while I'm running over here.
Okay, I have like a very negative, heavy thought, and I have a couple of lighter questions, so I'm going to go with the lighter question right now. I'm going to go with the lighter question right now. A little bit about the process of actually making the film itself. How did, Bob, your narrative over the film come to be? I mean, I guess I'm asking, like, which came first? Was the film, you know, did you have all this footage and then the narrative was written and then you edited it and then the narrative went over? I mean, how did the actual process of making the film happen?
That is a really good question. I think it's for me to answer, right? In the way I make films, I always let the visuals and the story lead, and my past films have had narration, you know, a narrator, most of them. And obviously Bob, I really wanted Bob's voice, or as it evolved, it was like Bob's voice was becoming this little, you know, it was like his subconscious just in your ear. And I liked that it was just very subtle. And there was an editor that I invited to edit with me, and so together we went through this, you know, process, and we just kept finding, because I kind of gleaned what he had, the voiceover that we would use, and we just kept finding that less was more, and I just kept distilling and distilling and distilling, and but let the, you know, when he has to shoot the pig, or has Richard shoot the pig, you know, just I had really great voiceover that he had said about, you know, sometimes they're sick, you can't do anything about it, you know, and it worked.
But Dave looked at me and said, "You don't need anything." And so we took it out, and all it was, death on a livestock farm is all around you all the time. And it was so much more powerful just having that. So, it was sort of a push-pull tweak, the process, but definitely, I went for the scenes first, like that had to be in the film, and obviously the slaughterhouse. We had incredible things that Bob said that he wrote about the slaughterhouse, but again, it sort of broke my heart to leave those out because it's so poetic, but it was more powerful in the end just to let the images and let the viewer's mind just fill in the blanks.
Yeah. There's not, this is my observation, I've seen this for the fourth time, and I have to say, or fifth, I've seen it 5 times, because I saw it, and then we've done 4 of these together. And I have to say, I enjoyed it this time the most. Every time I enjoy it more, and what I realized tonight, is that there's not a single wasted word. There's not a single, if this were literature, it would be a poem, not a novel. You found the very best scenes and the very best words coming out of this man's heart, right?
No, I agree. We sometimes call it a haiku, the film. Yeah. But what's really interesting, and this is kind of, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I always thought, because our relationship was so strong it was just the 3 of us, well, really 4 of us, because Monk was like he was so much a part of it, but it was Joe and me and Bob and Monk and the pigs. And so we were very close through the whole process, and Bob was very much part of the process. And I just thought, well, when I go to edit, if I'm missing any voiceover or any interview, I can get it from Bob. He's right there. And Bob had to sort of go, you sort of went MIA during the edit. He I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead. Right after the film wrapped and during the edit, I had a period of depression and couldn't be involved in anything, especially not the film. And so I sort of abandoned Allison during the edit and felt bad about it, but didn't have any choice.
And I think, in fact, it was brilliant for the film in the process, because what we had is what we had to work with. And I was sleepless for quite a while. I would say to Jim, my other half, like, I don't know if I can finish the film without him. What if I don't have this or that? I really thought that maybe we didn't have the film. And then it was like, well, you just got to find it in there. And so it was a very hard but incredibly wonderful process, because I learned so much about working with what you have, and no, you can't go back and get what you think might make it better. This is what it is. So it was a really, I'm grateful in a way, not that you went through what you went through, but I think it was for the best in the end.
Well, I'm going to go with the other, what I thought was a light question, but it's a heavy one now because I just respond to dogs so much, and the dog was really beautiful and amazing in the film. And do you think he missed the pigs, or did he welcome having all of your love and attention for himself?
I'm not sure if he liked the pigs that much. He liked being with me in the fields that happened to have pigs in them. But when he would get close to them, if they were not between the electric fence and him, but if they were between, you know, those metal panels that you saw me moving around to corral the pigs in, if he would be between, if there was a panel between him and the pigs, he would not infrequently bare his teeth at them and sort of be like, you know, I don't know how much I like you. But he was so much older by the time that we stopped farming that I think that he was glad that we weren't going out into the fields for 4 or 6 hours a day anymore.
He was so devoted.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Miles on those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. He was tired, and he's actually at that point letting me go across the fields were across the street. He would let me go across the street, and he'd hang out at the barn and just wait for me. I mean, he still went with me a lot, but he would let me go.
Yeah, a couple of comments, I guess, and then I just wanted to say that what calling the film a haiku, I think, is perfect terminology for what you did, the two of you. It is amazing, very moving. A little more down to earth. For me, I mean, it's great to see this. It's kind of validation for the way I feel and the way I've lived for the past 5 years or so. But I feel as if, again, mostly you're preaching to the converted, or the people such as myself that think we're converted. But I use that word very purposefully, the conversion, because this issue of, I guess you call it speciesism, is, I think we are in the dark ages of, I mean, that self-congratulatory term that folks use now, woke. We are in the dark ages of woke for speciesism. We, I believe, are about where abolitionists were in the 1700s. We are about where civil rights activists or civil rights consciousness, let's say, was in maybe the 1800s, pre-Civil War. It's nice, Honest Weight, I'm not picking on them because I shop there all the time, is hosting this, but Honest Weight sells meat, you know? It's why I didn't join. It makes no sense to me. Where I feel we are in this is that you go to a restaurant and one feels, well, I'm a vegetarian or I'm vegan, and you pour over the menu and you order something. 99% of the meals and the economy of that restaurant is based upon people that are omnivores, not vegans or vegetarians even. You shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be there, you know. I shouldn't shop at Honest Weight because of the meat thing. But I'm there because I'm not aware, is there like a vegetarian supermarket? I mean, I'm not being facetious, I'm just saying. But I think the way we are now with sexism and racism, where we constantly are raising the bar because we realize how much is inherent in our culture and in our own individual upbringings, what I'm hoping for, and I'm not going to go on, but because I really want your input, what you talked about with the mentoring now through Catskill Game Farm is like a little...
Animal Sanctuary, not Game Farm.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I misspoke. You're right.
We saved animals from the game
I know.
farm.
I'm sorry. It's like I'm not a tourist, so I apologize for that. But the speciesism or anti-speciesism, I'm not sure which way to say it, movement needs a Martin Luther King Jr. Absent or maybe with a Martin Luther King Jr., I don't know where he or she is going to come from. It needs the equivalent of, and I'm not a fan of his, but we need the equivalent of a Michael Bloomberg, what he has done in terms of funding the anti-NRA movement to the best of his ability. Anti-speciesism needs a patron. It needs a billionaire, because what we have, I mean, every day I open the newspaper and I read the story about Bob in the TU those several years ago, and I was not only touched, I was grateful for it. I thought, this is it gets out there. It's amazing, and I was so encouraged by your story. On the next page, of course, is a restaurant review, and they talk about the chicken wings and tearing into them, and I'm just like overwhelmed by that, and I don't know how you can make that kind of progress. And I guess I'm hoping for more encouraging words in that respect.
Okay. I'll be succinct.
That's great. Thanks.
There was a study out of RPI, as a matter of fact, 6 or 7 years ago on the nature of social change that asked the question, what does it take to change society about, regarding X? So the study, and you can Google this study, if you just do nature of social change or social change study, RPI, looked at social change movements around the world and asking the question, how come it is that you can limp along, and you use civil rights as an example, with no apparent change for decade after decade after decade after decade, and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit the 60s, and you got the Civil Rights Act, and you got the March on Washington, and you got all the legislation, and there's been bumpy but forward progress. Trump is certainly making things much worse, but I think you can't argue that there has been dramatic forward progress in terms of civil rights. Similarly, that 10 years ago, there weren't nearly as many vegan products in Honest Weight or in the supermarket or on menus in chain restaurants. So there has been profound change, and the study found that when you hit, that you can limp along with no apparent change decade after decade after decade after decade until 10% of a population says, I'm done. I'm not participating in this thing, whatever this thing is. So I always say to people, we're just trying to get to 10% of the population saying this is completely unacceptable, after which, according to this study, the language is changed, spreads like wildfire. So that's first thing. Second thing, billionaires are funding this. Some of the richest people in the world are, but they are mostly funding lab-grown meat, because there's this interesting book. I'm reluctant to recommend it for. There's this interesting book written by a guy named Paul Shapiro, who was formerly with a lot of organizations, but recently with HSUS, and he looks at lab-grown meat and lab-grown leather, and talks about the many billionaires who are getting behind this, and now the question is how to scale it, because right now growing it is so costly that it's not yet scalable. But the billionaires are in the movement. They're hedging their bets, believing that not enough of us will go vegan quickly enough, but also not convinced. It's interesting, if Paul Shapiro is right, that they don't even feel confident that people will eat lab-grown meat? Like, do meat eaters want to eat an animal even if the lab-grown meat has the same taste and texture? But the point is that there are billionaires out there in support of veganism. And the final thing I wanted to say is in support of why films like this matter and all these efforts matter, is that 85% of people who identify as vegan lapse within 6 months to a year. So films like this are not only good for the choir. I agree that a challenge is how to get in front of people like my brother, who had bacon for breakfast, ham for lunch, and steak for dinner, how to get in front of people like that, but also we also need to always be holding the hand of and supporting the vegans because there is that 85% statistic.
That's a really good point. Yeah, someone else at a screening said how important it is to energize the people who have made the commitment, but maybe sort of flagging, is that the right word? Yeah, that is a big challenge. Well, you were talking about honest weight. Well, I hope that some meat eaters will go to the. I mean, it's great to be in a more diverse, setting. So.
I'm wondering if there's anybody in the audience who is not vegan who is willing, A, to raise your hand in this crowd, and B, and B, whether you can honestly say that this film is having you reconsider things. Anybody?
Really?
Really? Well, there you go.
And I might add, this room had twice the people, so the movie itself, I mean, we're talking a diminished crew at this stage in the night, but I'm sure that you've reached. There's a question here from Skidmore.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lynn, and thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and what a great movie, and it has helped me to reconsider things. What will it take to get you up to Skidmore College?
Oh, very little. Now, I'll give you a card afterwards, and then, that would be wonderful. And
Yes,
we
it
can
would.
offer
It'd be
you
great.
the pig-free tour, or we could try to get some pigs there with the film.
That'd be
Anyway,
great.
we can talk. Then
Okay.
that would be wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, that would be.
Yeah, we're going to have
Sorry.
to do this again.
Yeah, we're going to have to do it again. Avec les cochons. Cochons.
Okay, let me.
Lori.
Let me just, sorry. Again, this is, a lot of people wanted to see this, but it's being recorded, so folks, some just couldn't come, so please repeat.
I keep on thinking, since Bob is from Schoharie, having the movie, played somewhere in, by Schoharie, like either Schenectady's closer, or, somewhere more local to Schoharie.
My cousin lives in Dallas, and she organized a screening in Dallas, and she had a really hard time finding a venue because it's very difficult to show to show a movie about the ethics of raising animals for slaughter in Texas. Would we have the same problem closer to Schoharie? Maybe. I hope that people are more open-minded. But it's a good idea. It would be nice to have it shown where the farm is.
No pressure, but can't we have a screening at the sanctuary, for God's sake?
For God's sake, can't you make your next movie at Catskill Animal Sanctuary, Allison? Yes, we could have a screening. At Catskill Animal Sanctuary.
That's not close to Schoharie. That's true. But people could could see the film and then go out and see 2 of Bob's pigs and say hi. What?
Oh my gosh, we could go see Mario and.
Yeah, I mean, we could. Yeah, Niblet. What were your names? Niblet and Ami. And you have to tell the story about why you saved those 2.
Allison saved those 2 pigs. No, both. Yeah, you had me feeding them corn. And then they made themselves known. So when there's 250 pigs on a farm, there's 250 pigs on a farm, and it's just pigs. They're just pigs. They're not individuals. They're not recognizable. You don't know one pig from the next. But when there's 20 pigs on a farm, it's very easy to see their personalities. And I should point out that the personalities that you see when there are 20 pigs on a farm are not missing when there's 250 pigs on the farm. It's just like Esther the Wonder Pig. All pigs are Esther. And similarly on a farm, all pigs are the 20 pigs, even though there's 250 on the farm. What was I talking about? Oh, right. So when we were down to about 20 or 40 pigs on the farm, we started to feed the pigs corn to get them to do shots that we wanted them to do, things like that. And we were trying to lure them around. And as soon as I started to feed them corn, they started to pay more attention to me than they did when they were 250 pigs on the farm, and they were eating corn on their own, but I wasn't feeding them corn. When I was giving them ears of corn, they made themselves known. And Allison fell in love with this little pig she wasn't the runt of the litter, but she was very small, and she was very plucky, as Allison likes to say. And she was always the leader of the pack. And Allison brought her to my attention, and I noticed her, and I agreed, and she had a great personality. But then there was another pig who turned out to be the sweetest, most friendly pig that I had ever met. He would constantly be coming over and just nuzzling at your leg, sort of like, hi, how are you? And you'd look at him, and he'd look at you, and you'd pet him, and he'd look at you, and he'd be like, pet me some more. And I named him Ami, which is friend in French. And we did an interview. We sat down to do an interview at some point after Ami and Niblet had gotten named. And in the interview, I broke down crying and said that I couldn't have those 2 pigs killed, that I needed to find a place for them to live their lives. Luckily, Kathy had space, and she took them.
We have a question here. Hi. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the film. At first, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I kind of have a question and a comment and a story, and I'm just going to talk for a little bit. So my background is in biochemistry, and I go to St. Rose. I'm still an undergraduate. I've been vegan for 3 years and vegetarian for 7, so basically like half my life I haven't really eaten meat. But I had an opportunity recently to have an internship at the Albert Einstein Institute, and I thought that it was going to be amazing. And then I found out that the doctor that I was working with was trying to cure intraventricular hemorrhage, which is just brain bleed in premature infants. And I'm actually sad to share this story in front of all of these vegans and vegetarians because this is really horrible and eye-opening, and I only wanted to share because of what this gentleman mentioned about doing a documentary about people who participate in animal testing. So essentially, this doctor had been doing research for 15 years, and his model was rabbits. And I was told that I was going to be doing behavioral studies working with live rabbits. And when I got there, I found out that basically what they do is they induce premature labor in a mother rabbit and end up discarding her body because they have to get these premature baby rabbits out. And since he's working on curing a brain disease, they have to inject his protein serum into these baby rabbits and eventually decapitate them over a week's worth of time. So this is 12 rabbits per week, and he's been doing this for 15 years. And so in the time that I was there, I was only there for a month and a half because I couldn't take it anymore. We went through 62 rabbits. And I'm horrified, and I feel absolutely awful that I was even a part of that. And I understand, you know, from the medical perspective, why I guess you have to test the things that you are going to be putting in humans, but there's this whole other side to it that I think is completely horrible, and it needs to be stopped. And I really think that there's this huge veil. I mean, you were talking about how people don't understand, you know, where their meat is coming from. That's one thing, but where your products are coming from, where your medications, I mean, no one knows. And I didn't even really understand the magnitude of that until I was put into that situation. So I really think that it would be a great thing if you could share that or make a film about that. And I think that would be really eye-opening to a lot of people. My question being that I am into science, and you mentioned the lab-grown meat. So to my understanding, it begins with an animal culture, and then it's continually reproduced. So you're technically still consuming animal tissue. I was just wondering how you all felt about that, because I understand that it has a huge impact on the environment, but you are still technically eating animal tissue. So I guess that was my question.
I'm just going to say, I watched a little video, and I can't remember the company that was making, but they actually used a feather. They chose a very healthy hen and put her in a lovely, you know, outdoor area. And when she naturally molted, whatever, a feather, they took the feather, and that's where they got the DNA from. So I'm not sure if it has to be. I haven't eaten meat for so long that it makes me like to even think of eating something like that. But I don't. If it will save a lot of animals' lives, then and help the environment, then I think it's the lesser of the evils. But that's my personal. Do you want to weigh in, or do you?
I agree with Allison. I think I'm not an expert, so if anybody, but I'm so not an expert. I've read one book and a few articles, and had a few conversations. That's the extent. I do think that primarily it's from a culture, from the animal tissue, but not exclusively. I think Allison is right. I also am totally creeped out by, I just think it's weird. But it doesn't matter what I think. If it's going to profoundly reduce suffering, then again, starting from the place that this is the biggest social change movement in our history, maybe tied with climate change, because you are, and related to climate change, interlinked with climate change, because you are asking every single person alive. You're not asking men to shift regarding women, whites to shift regarding non-white, straight people to shift regarding gay people. You're asking everybody to shift their understanding of every other species, and then their behavior. So, you know, in their entire lifestyle, what they eat, what they wear, what they put on their floor, what they put on their face. And so it's going to require all approaches. So even though I personally think it's creepy and would never eat it, I am not opposed to it.
Just want to make everyone aware it's 9:45, and we were going to wrap this up by 10 o'clock. So I'm sure our panelists have to go to the bathroom. So,
but we can also talk for a few minutes out there,
really?
right?
Oh,
Or can we?
okay.
And we can sign DVDs if you want to buy a DVD.
Okay. Okay. I see 5 hands, and they're all very important. Okay.
We just really wanted to quickly say that the what you're referencing with the feather is actually the Just company who does Just Mayo, Just Ranch, and all of that. And if you Google Ian the chicken, you can actually watch a video of the people from Just Company eating the lab-grown meat with
From
Ian.
the chicken.
He's
Ian's
like
watching.
there.
Wow.
It's
Right.
a little odd.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
a
but
video.
it's a really sweet video. So just in case anyone wants to see.
And it is weird. But it's very cool.
And about the rabbits, I was watching behind you, Lisa Robinson read her face as you were telling about the rabbits in labs. She, Google or get a card from her, Red Robin song, Guest House and Sanctuary. They have a whole bunch of rabbits at their sanctuary, and you should really visit and become a part of that and help your soul.
I think we have to remember just what that gentleman in the back said. We're kind of like in the 1860s when it comes to this movement. I mean, we have a ways to go, but we're going to go. We're going to do it. It seems overwhelming, but we're doing it as we speak tonight. Who raised their hands? Okay.
Yeah, from what I've read and understood, there are certain nutrients that are difficult or impossible to obtain with a vegan diet, such as B12. Can anybody speak to this and how people deal with that?
Okay, the question was certain nutrients that aren't available in a vegan diet, how to address that. Somebody said take a pill. I think that, well, I'll address as far as protein goes. Yeah. I mean, supplements and mostly, for the most part, is my understanding is there are no deficiencies if you take supplements and you eat a well-balanced diet, as with a meat-based diet. So, Kathy, anyone want to speak to that? What do you do if there's
there's plant-based vegan B12, B6, B complex, so you can get plant-based B. And what's interesting, I just had extensive blood work done, and I don't take any supplements, and I have no nutritional deficiencies.
I did too recently, but I will say Bob and I sort of were on the same path, going from vegetarian to vegan, and I'm still a work in progress trying to figure out the diet thing, and the thing that's been really interesting for me is that I've had to rethink eating completely, because you do want to keep balanced and you want to keep healthy and you want to make sure you're getting enough protein. So it makes you a lot more, this is just my experience. I've become a lot more mindful about about what I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body.
But one of the biggest nutritional myths is about the protein myth. There's this great line in one of the movies, I can't remember which, and the doctor, you know what I'm going to say? The doctor says, it's something like this. Ask me how I get enough protein. And so the woman says, how do you get enough protein? And he goes, I eat.
You do. Well, that's one thing. It pisses me off, really, that I grew up, and all of us did, with the food pyramid, which was such a... Yeah. It was so misleading and so wrong, and we it really did so much harm to ourselves and the planet. It's a fallacy that never did I imagine that broccoli had protein. I grew up absolutely
believing the only source of protein was animal.
More protein in a pound of spinach than a pound of beef. Just easier to eat a pound of beef.
More protein in a pound of spinach than in a pound of beef.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Brent.
I don't have a question so much as a comment. About the B12, one of the main reasons why in animal products there is B12, is because, they supplement it in the feed. That's one of the main reasons why it's so commonly found in animal products. Yeah.
Brent's a vegan. Yeah. So you said that the reason a lot of B12 is found in animal products is because when they're being raised in these settings, they're infused with B12.
Yes.
So it's not a natural.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same. Thanks, Brent. Thank you. Lisa.
Thank you. There's a lot of great documentaries mentioned earlier, and just to address the question about the nutrients and is it healthy, I don't think any of the diet-related documentaries were brought up, and I just wanted to, Forks Over Knives is a great movie, but if you really do your research, you'll find that whole food, especially whole food plant-based diet, is the healthiest way that you can eat. And the number one killers in our country today are all related to the standard American diet. So cancer, stroke, heart disease. So Forks Over Knives is just one great movie. What the Health, I think, was mentioned. So it can't be answered here, and I don't think that was addressed today. So
thank you. Yeah. Forks Over Knives, a great documentary on nutrition. Who else? Anybody? Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I really appreciated the slaughterhouse footage just because I thought it really spoke to how there really is no humane slaughter. And I was wondering how difficult it was in order to obtain the permission in order to film there, and if you had anything that they wouldn't allow you to show, or if they were pretty willing overall in letting you film whatever was happening.
I had a very good relationship with the people who ran the slaughterhouse, so it was really easy to get them to agree to let us film. The owner of the slaughterhouse was a professor at SUNY Cobleskill in their meat slaughterhouse lab, whatever you call it. And so he's sort of education minded and has that mindset. What was the second part of the question?
How hard was it to get permission?
Were they an open book?
Oh, right, no. Yes, yeah, absolutely open book in the slaughterhouse. The only thing is there's a federal law that you cannot film a USDA inspector. So that was the only thing that we couldn't film.
And I made the aesthetic choice not to film their faces because I really felt it was Bob's story, and so that was just a choice, stylistically. And I also felt I didn't want. They're very proud of that they're providing, a humane. I mean, they do believe that it's humane, and the animals. Actually, I have a friend who takes photographs in slaughterhouse. Well, mostly the fur industry, but she's been in slaughterhouses, and she was like, "Why didn't you use the sound? Why?" And I said, "That is absolutely the sync sound from those scenes. I mean, obviously the pigs were stressed out. I mean, that last pig with his tongue out you were saying you've never seen that before, right? But they weren't screaming and shrieking, and so they're proud of it. I just chose not to shoot their faces because I thought it was better for the story. If we walk out, people can continue with asking a few little personal questions if they want to. What do you think?
Guys, all right then. Thank you all, and let's move out.